Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an airline pilot, and in today's video I want to take you through the complete process of choosing and then planning a flight like I would typically do it on my YouTube channel. So let's go ahead and get going. As mentioned in my last video on how to choose the best flight, I want to set myself a couple of basics, and today my basics are that I want to fly an Airbus A380 and I want at least 2 hours in cruise to do different stuff. I know that I will be using 4x time acceleration for the cruise portion of the flight. That means I need a flight of a length of at least 8 to 9 hours. So 8 hours cruise makes it 9 hours total in order to have sufficient time available for whatever I want to do en route. So let's start by picking our flight, and for that we will need flight radar 24, and we are going to go down to the filters. As mentioned, I want to fly an Airbus A380, so I'll add new filter, aircraft A388, and now it shows me all the A380s currently flying on the world on the map over here. Now, with that done, we can kind of make a little pick here in which region of the world we want to fly. So, for example, do I want to do something Australia to the Middle East? Do I want to do the Far East to the Middle East? Or do I want to do transatlantic? And I kind of feel like transatlantic would probably offer me the closest flight times, since Middle East to Australia is usually about 12 hours in the real world, so with time acceleration it would take me about 3.5, which is longer than what I want. And transatlantic usually gives me exactly what I'm looking for in terms of the length of the flight here. So let's go ahead and have a look at a couple of the A380s flying over here. So we do see quite a couple of Lufthansas over here, but I've recently featured quite a lot of German airports, so let's not do Lufthansa. Then we've got Emirates. We know that those flights are much longer than the 9 hours we are looking for. But we do have a couple over here. For example, the Speedbird 2 X-Ray, San Francisco to London. Now down here we can see it departed 8 hours 27 ago, lands in 1 hour 11. So that's 9 hours 40 minutes flight time. That's about the perfect length of a flight. The airports are very nice as well, especially San Francisco has a superb add-on airport available, and then Heathrow has a very good add-on available as well. So that seems to be the perfect flight. So what I'm going to do is to click down here on more, and then I'll go onto the flight number, which gives me a new tab with the exact flight data of this flight. Down here I can cross-check the length of the previous flights, which were all in the region of about 9.5 hours or a little bit longer, assuring me that I have sufficient time available in the cruise as I want them. And we also get the scheduled flight times over here. So with that out of the way, let's get into SimBrief and let's start planning. So we know that this is British Airways flight 248, and if we just click onto the latest actual flight, we also get the call sign 2 X-Ray. So Speedbird 284 is the first thing I'm going to enter. Speedbird 284. Now we are departing from San Francisco towards London Heathrow. Our aircraft will be the A388, which I'm just typing into here. And then here's something that I've done for myself, that's to create an A380 with a 560 ton max takeoff weight, because the standard fly-by-wire profile here has a little bit less, so I'm going to choose that one. Nonetheless, cruise profile is going to be based on cost index, and we could Google what British Airways uses. It will be about 50. Alright, so now that we've got that, let's go back to flight radar. Call sign is going to be Speedbird 2 X-Ray, which we are going to enter down here. Fast fingers, Speedbird 2 X-Ray, here we go. Our airplane is going to be the Golf X Lear, which is the livery that I've got. Now, let's continue towards the schedule. So we're departing at 23:30 UTC. So let's go up here to the schedule, and I am going to set it a day back because the sim has historical weather for the past 24 hours. And then 23:30 on the 12th, apply, and no, I don't want to change my runways. And here we go. So now let's go ahead and start looking into a couple of the basics. The last one planning point is the scheduled block time, and going over here we can see 9:55 is the landing, then 23:30, so 9:55 plus 30 minutes is 10 hours and 25 minutes of scheduled block time. So let's enter that one down here. So 10:25, And, well, departure runways, we are not going to use runway 1 left, but let's start top to bottom. Now that we've got the basics, we will get to the alternate a little bit later on. That shall not be our concern just yet. Let's go ahead and decide on the route of flight that we want to use. Now, SimBrief often offers you a lot of real-world routings that you can use down there, and today we will be using one of those. But which one is best? We're about to find out. So let's hit calculate and compare, just to get ourselves a little basic flight data here. 9 hours 40 minutes, no remarks on the flight, and everything looking good. Takeoff weight actually isn't all too much. Now, I haven't changed the payload yet, we're gonna get to that later, but the first thing we want to find is the optimal route. So that's this one. Now let's click onto the second one. Let's also hit calculate and compare. And we are going to do this for all the routes available. Now this one takes 46 minutes extra, definitely not gonna fly that. So let's click the third one, calculate and compare. See what we are gonna get, and that one is 35 seconds longer than the first route, so not gonna use that. Now let's go down to the fourth one, calculate and compare. And this one is, again, 30 seconds longer, not gonna use that one. And the last one, probably gonna be a little bit longer, again, since it's a rather northbound route. Yep, 30 minutes longer. So we can see that the first route was actually the best one, since the block fuel is higher on all the other routes. So we are gonna take the route from the very top over here, which, by the way, is exactly the same one that the real-world flight is taking as well. At least normally it is. Today, yeah, it could be. Alright, so that much about the choice of the route. Now that we know the route that we're going to take, let's decide on the payload. And what we could do over here is to search a seat map of the actual airline, but I ain't gonna do that today. Instead, our fly-by-wire A380 can take 484 passengers, so I'm just gonna load all that up. Then we'll also take some 5,000 kilos of cargo into the hold, and then let's just hit calculate and compare one more time to see if this exceeds the capabilities of the plane. But actually we can see it doesn't, we're still fine within any of the weights, so we can accept this payload. Now next let's decide on the departure runway, and for that let's hit the weather icon over here. We can see the wind is 250 at 10, and that's what any ATC is going to decide their runway on, so it's going to be runway 28. Now they do have real-world ATIS available down here as well, saying departing runways 1 left and right. However, of course, at this time, which you can see down here, is 0824. On the following day, it would be deep nighttime, so for that reason you're not getting 100% realistic departure information for your actual planned departure time from the real-world ATIS. So, nonetheless, we can say with those winds at the moment, runway 28 is definitely the preferred runway. Looking at the TAF, it's the same tendency over here. It's always around 280 degrees, so let's pick runway 28 left for today's sit, and now we can actually update the runways. Alright, and that's our choice of runway. Now that this is done, let's scroll a little bit further down and go ahead and have a look at the alternate airports. So I'm pretty sure we are not going to fly to Liverpool on the Airbus A380. So let's go ahead and pick another couple airports. So the obvious choice here would be to go for something like Manchester, so Echo Golf Charlie Charlie. Then we already have that as number 2, so let's go ahead and change that. And over here we'll take Gatwick as advisory information. Then we could go for Birmingham, which we already have as number 4, so no need to select that. So let's take something that's not in the UK, just in case something general happens here, and take, for example, Paris. And that gives me 4 good and A380 suitable alternate airports that we can use over here. Now, en route alternate is within this circle over here, so Keflavik certainly one possibility. Another one that would be a little bit closer would be Shannon, and that's the one that I'll actually take, because normally airlines try to choose the one that's closest to the destination, so that, remember, this is all planning, actual pilots in the actual flight might make different choices, but from a planning point of view, it would probably be better for the airline if you landed in Shannon than if you landed in Iceland. Okay, so that's our alternate airports down here. Now, obviously, we should at least have a look at the weather at our destination alternate to ensure that it is suitable for a landing. Now, we can see over here it absolutely is. There are some heavy showers of rain with gusts forecast, but only from 1200 UTC onwards. And as you'll remember from looking at the schedule, we expect to land at 0955. So easy going over there. If you want to know the exact limits for planning an airport as an alternate, first of all, they're different in many countries of the world. So the European Union, or rather EASA land, has one standard. The US will have a completely different standard. So easiest thing to do is just to Google them. You will easily find information on that. Now, with the alternate airports out of the way, we got to plan the ETOPS section of the flight if that is applicable to our scenario. So let's go down to ETOPS section, and the first thing you can always do is just to hit calculate to let it do something automatic. And sometimes that information is good, other times it's not. Today it actually doesn't look too shabby, so we know that over here in the States things should be fine. So this route over here should keep us within distance from airports like Toronto or Montreal, so we don't need ETOPS crossing Canada. We definitely do need ETOPS crossing the Atlantic Ocean though. So the automatic system suggests St. John's down here and then Knock up here, which probably isn't the best option for an A380, especially why use Knock if you've got an airport that's dedicated as an ETOPS alternate on the Atlantic, which is Shannon. So for this reason, let's just go ahead and change a couple of the plans over here. So first things first, is St. John's the best choice, or could we maybe go with Gander or Goose Bay? Well, let's try. Charlie Yankee, Quebec X-Ray, validate. And then let's also choose that as our alternate and just see what the weather is going to look like over there. So let's hit this, and as we can see, the weather in Gander is absolutely fine. It's closer to a route of flight, so why not take Gander? On the other hand side, as mentioned, Knock is probably not a good idea. Shannon is. So let's hit that. Let's hit validate. Quick look at the weather over in Shannon, and the forecast is looking excellent as well. So with that, we know that this ETOPS section seems appropriate for our flight. And now comes the big moment. Now we've basically done all of our entries, so let's go ahead and hit generate flight and see what we're going to get. And something you will notice with a lot of my flights is that we barely have OFP revision number 1. That's because I find it easiest to notice any possible planning mistakes you might have done when you actually just look at the PDF version of the flight plan. So now that we've generated a flight, let's hit view PDF and see what we are gonna get over here. Now, as always, starting down here on the route, we can see we are crossing the North Atlantic tracks today, so that is something we might have to think about replanning. On the other hand side, might as well just file it that way and see what we're gonna get. In the worst case, they are just going to reroute us to the north over here, but that's going to be a problem for later on for the pilots to decide, not for the dispatcher. Obviously, you would think about this, but then again, looking at the track messages, which we can do real quick. So all those on the dispatch information, we can see that they're actually using level 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 400. So all the levels are actually used. Might be rather busy over the pond this night, so we could think about rerouting the airplane. But on the other hand side, we don't absolutely have to. So let's just say that this route of flight is acceptable for us. Then the next thing I would generally look at is to go up here and just have a look over our landing weight, takeoff weight, and our times. So we are arriving like 25 minutes early, 09:29, versus a scheduled 09:55. That's looking good. And we are planned in flight level 350, later on 370. Stays at 37, stays at 37, and then we got a step descent to level 230. Seems absolutely fine. Now, since the flight plan has been made for level 370 over here, we could consider manually adjusting the required or the planned altitude, just to see if that makes a positive or a negative impact for our flight, and that's what I'm going to do. So what we'll do is I'll hit copy the route down here, then you go back to edit flight. And now we got to play a little bit with SimBrief. So we keep the past time, we are planned on flight level 350, and now I'll simply paste our route into here, and this includes all the step climbs. So we've got 370 at Yankee Sierra Papa, and then what happens if we change this to flight level 390 for the pond? Well, let's hit calculate and compare and find out. And we can see this saves a minute, but we're actually using 1,600 kilograms more fuel. Now, we could try to change it over here as well, but I think if this uses quite a bit more fuel, then the likely reason for that is that the winds are going to be better down in flight level 370. We can nicely see this over here as well. Now that I changed to flight level 390 for the part after the ocean, we can see that our fuel usage has actually increased. So it was 1,650 kilos more for that option, and then it was 1,748 kilos more over here. So even though we are saving a little bit of time, we are burning additional fuel. So for this reason, it's probably better just to leave it in flight level 370 as SimBrief has calculated automatically. So let's just go ahead and remove those restrictions again. So back to flight level 370 over here, back to flight level 370 over here, and then we have generally figured out that route optimization isn't really possible, but it definitely is worth playing with those things, because SimBrief is not always giving you the absolutely optimum flight level. But now we've basically determined that we have done the most optimal calculation over here. Average wind component, very nice by the way, minus 48 or 48 knots tailwind, so that's pretty cool. Well, and this is what we can do over here. So in my opinion, we have now generated the best possible flight plan, making maximum use of the standard abilities that SimBrief offers us. I'm not going to go into stuff like manually planning a route in this particular video, because I want to keep it simple for you guys to be able to use it on your everyday flight without deeper inside knowledge into actual dispatching. Well, and that's everything we need for today's flight. So the British Airways flight 284 from San Francisco to London Heathrow is now fully planned, and now we can go ahead to the execution by starting our simulator. But that's going to be it for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. As always, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, and if you really love what I'm doing on this channel, I would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me Coffee link in the video description below. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to see you all again on the next one.